Welcome to the episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating or review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about total party kills. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix. Right straight through, no editing.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to the episode of Just More Fix. Today we are going to talk about TPKs, or total party kills, for anyone who doesn't know what TPK stands for, I suppose. So it's a pretty common, is that an acronym or is that an
acronym theme?
It's all of the things, right?
A mood. It's
oh, I like it as a mood. What kind of mood are you in? TPK mood. True that. All right, so we're going to kind of approach this a couple different ways because I think we've all been through a game. Have you ran a game and killed the entire party?
Yeah.
I know I have.
On accident.
And have you been playing in a game where everyone died?
Uh-huh.
Okay, right on. So we're going to go at two ways about this. So I think TPK most often happens in sort of like your D20 style games, right? It seems to be more common where it happens. And especially in your more punishing games, right? So for the TPK, for the games that you ran where there's a TPK, what game was that? Do you remember?
So I had this idea wherein I was going to make my players goblin, and the good guys were going to come through and wreck your town, and then you were going to have to rebuild your goblin town.
Right. I remember this.
So you guys decided you were going to go hunting. Somebody decided they were going to go hunting. And I was like, well, what's kind of difficult, but not like super difficult?
It was a boar, wasn't it?
A boar.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it murdered all four
Killed
of you.
Us all
it was
savagely.
Brutal.
I don't even know that we did much damage to it.
You did not. I think it was only like half dead.
I remember this.
First session.
And that, what system was that? Was that...
that was 30.5.
All right. Can you remember any other TPK that you have either ran or played in?
It's also...
Who's running that game?
Oh, I really don't know.
I don't think you were at that. The one that I know of with the Beholder. He used a lot of Beholders.
I know it was a Beholder, and it was definitely at Travis' house.
Okay. Either way.
So, like, we're talking
way back.
Way back.
All right. So the TPKs on my end of things, I've had Lamentation, Mork Borg.
I feel confident. I was in that Mork Borg PK session.
Yeah, and that was fun, though. Which is kind of really what we're going to try and get to is how to make...
I've had all of my characters die in DCC, but some characters
survive.
There was like 3 out of 8.
Right. So what we're trying to get to is sort of like wrapping your head around the thought process that TPKs can be fun if it's done right. And what are the elements that make it to where you can achieve a satisfying TPK, not just for the GM, but for everyone at the table. And not to say that as a GM, you should be striving for a TPK, because really there's no challenge to do that. You just sort of, can make it happen at a whim, essentially, right? So I digress, I suppose. So Lamentations, I've had several. Mork Borg, 3rd edition, I've had several. I've been part of several. We played a lot of 3E back in the day. If you hear some rumbling in the background here, it's storming and raining at our house, so we'll see how the audio comes out or whatever. But so, not sure how to go about this initially. So so let's break it down this way. The TPKs, where everyone died, right? Sort of starts to lose its meaning after you say it several times, right? In the ones that you found where you were either dissatisfied as a player or as running them, what were the main things that created that to happen?
First of all, I don't know if I've ever been unsatisfied PPK as a player.
Well, hang on. Let's back up one step before we go this way. First of all, I think we should both probably answer the question, do you think it is okay or possible to achieve a satisfying game or session or one shot where everyone dies?
100%.
Okay. Both as a game master and as a player?
Probably.
Right. I tend to agree. Sometimes I think about some of the big movies or whatever, you're trying to figure out emulating stories and that kind of stuff. And some of the really cool movies and satisfying stories have these moments where everyone dies, right? So like
Rogue everyone.
yeah, no, that's exactly where I was going to go.
Well, I can't think of a lot of it where everyone dies. It's not good for the franchise. You see.
No, but there's a lot of movies that are kind of like standalone movies where that kind of happens sometimes. You know what I mean? So I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but yeah. So, but Rogue One would be the first one to point to. Actually, the one that popped right in my head, and I thought, in my opinion, that is the best and strongest of the Star Wars movies on basically almost every single level that was there. Just it's my favorite of the franchise, right? So how is it we can achieve that with our games, but not achieve rocks fall, everyone dies, right? Because that's, so what are the elements of the unsatisfying total party kill adventure where, that creates that rocks fall, everyone dies moment?
Well, I think probably the most obvious one is that it's like your GM should not be throwing a temper tantrum. Let me put it that way. Like
right.
It should not be some kind of reactionary punishment.
Okay, I agree. And I think that's a two-way street too, because I think that also falls back on the players where it shouldn't be a temper tantrum where it's like, you're trying sometimes when you're running a game and you're laying out like this is the most dangerous path to go. Perhaps it's a better idea to not, go full frontal assault. Then it's like, nope, this is the plan and we're sticking to it. And, so I think that definitely applies, but it's also a two-way street on that one sometimes. You've got to be able to, just like the game master has to be able to adapt his plot and story and enemies to what the players are doing, the players have to be able to be flexible that way too with what's happening in the game. So what else? What other elements have you found that are just make this unsatisfying?
Probably be some kind of time for character development beforehand. Before it happens.
Okay.
Like if nobody's invested in the game yet, then you just sort of have a flop.
Okay. So that's interesting. So like, I agree with what you're saying, but how is it in one shot sometimes? I have had several super satisfying games where everyone dies, right? And there was virtually no character development because it's like sort of like the premise of the one shot. It's like we're going into these crazy odds and we're all gonna,
Yeah, but that going in, one. And two, most of those are like pre-generated characters, so they come with some background already built in.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Quirks and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you're still talking about generally at least a couple hours that you've been playing. That 4 hour. When I say no time for character development, I mean like you sat down, you played 2 to 3 scenes.
Right, and then bang, everybody
First
died.
encounter, everybody dies, or second encounter, everybody dies. You know what I mean? Nobody had a chance. I guess maybe I should say there should be multiple instances of success before mega failure.
Right, so you don't just beat people down until you finally finish them off. Right on. So
I mean, you can do that too. It just can't be foul stroke of like, well, and you died. Okay, that was fun. Everybody have a good time. Right
on. So I'm going to go with lack of agency is a big thing that I have noticed. So like the one that comes to mind for me was third edition. So we had very high level characters. We went into Undermountain, got ambushed by a bunch of drow, all rogues, sneak attack, lots of D6 damage for dice, right? Everybody's dying. I had a character who could be sneak attacked because I was barbarian, high level, whatever. So I'm wading through and just murdering all of these dark elves and stuff. And then I was the only one left, or not the only one left, but nearly, right? So then we go a little further down. So we had some success, but it was just a matter of whittling down resources, right? Then we encounter a beholder, and the beholder kills everyone except for me because I was just rolling wicked good on saves and killed the beholder in one hit. And I guess it wasn't a total party kill, but it became evident. Brandon was the guy who was running the game at the time, and he was a very like you had to make a character to survive when you were playing his games. And it seemed like it's like, well, there's only one left. I gotta finish him off, right? And it was kind of like because I was trying to gather the corpse of my party to leave out of Undermountain to get them resurrected or whatever, right? And it almost became a thing where on the way out, I got ambushed by that same group of dark elves again. I had killed by myself 32 of them, okay? Because I had a tally because I thought it was kind of funny. And so I was like, what are we doing, And I thought it would have been a cooler moment for the story had I managed to escape, live, resurrect my friends or whatever, and then go back down. Instead, everyone's thunder got stolen, right? Because it could have created some cool moments of role-playing and like teasing one another about like, oh, do you remember that time, that kind of stuff. So I guess it's more about like choosing to walk into those moments and like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes you have to give your players room to retreat. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense or not, or even if I'm describing that the right way, but it's so hard to, because you want if you're going to, for example, in a lot of OSR games like Death Frost Doom and a bunch of these games that have a lot of TPKs in them, is that you sort of are at a point where you set off something bad, right? Because I don't want to do any spoilers for Death Frost Doom because it's one of the best TPK moments ever. But like in a lot of those kind of adventures, you're setting off a chain of events, right, that are bad. Okay. And then it becomes this moment where it's like, well, we can either stand here and fight and kind of close off this tomb or whatever, and it's probably going to cost all of our lives, but in doing so we will prevent like all of this evil from escaping, destroying the world and whatever, right? So you still have this moment of choice about what you're going to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes and no.
So you seem skeptical.
Well, the reason I seem skeptical is because, okay, what about like death by trap? Is that always a bad death then? Because that's not fair. You should have been more clever. That's part of the game. Like if the dice kill you,
I don't disagree. Okay.
Says you die, you should die.
I don't disagree with that. However, most traps aren't designed in such a way as to where they will kill everyone in the group. Or if they are, it's like giant, like the scene in Star Wars where the walls are closing in, right? And it's, you know, so I guess what I would say is if you're going to design a trap that is going to do that, it should be big and it should be a pivotal moment in the story. Because like, if you think about scenes in Star Wars, that's always one that comes up, like the big rescue scene with Princess Leia and they're stuck in the thing and the walls are going down, right? Or like Indiana Jones and the ball rolling down the tunnel. That would have, you know, killed him and the other guy. So I think that if you're going to have a trap that has the potential of just outright killing everyone, whatever that trap is should be like a larger than life trap so that when the moment comes and goes by and kills everyone, that it's like, oh, that one trap, right? It's not just, well, 12 poison arrows come out and then everybody saves versus poison or dies and then they all die. Do you know what I'm saying?
But.
Okay.
I see what you're saying. I just that I.
But why? Like, don't you feel like
because right. So what you're saying is the story part should matter more, and I agree with that. But I feel like you're discounting the gamey part of the game, like the dice and the stats. That's you know,
right? No,
the
I agree.
Game part.
I agree.
The game you should be able to win at the game as well.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying. It's just I feel like,
and I think so. When you're talking about whether or not you want to replay a total party kill adventure, I would rather replay one that I died for gamey reason. You know, I would rather, let's say I went, you know, you set up this dungeon that has like just all kinds of traps and, you know, I'm like checking for them, but I'm like, maybe I missed one or I didn't get it. And then I would be like, okay, well, let me have another try at it. You know, it's like the reason you play board games again and again, right? It's not the same reason that you replay RPGs again and again. Right. I don't know what the word gamey, but that's the one I'm
No,
using,
I get what you're saying though.
It's a different kind of,
I don't know, like
it's like a competition against yourself, you know, do better the next time. I'm going to beat the dungeon next time.
I don't know. It's one of the, I don't know. It's maybe I hadn't really considered this and hadn't really thought about traps in that way, I guess. There was a book that came out long time ago and it had loads. It was just like crazy elaborate traps that were just terrible and wicked. And like, they were traps that were made to like drop in that were like for your people that have been playing trap heavy dungeon games for a long time. And they're really making sure that they try to, you know, poke every brick and do all of the things to make sure that they're safe. Like they have false triggers kind of stuff to make sure that like they're really going to get you, you know, like, and some of them are just terrible because they're so funny and ridiculous, but it adds an element of fun to the game and a lot of them were very deadly. But I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you on the gamey part, but I think if it's a trap that is going to be like a poison needle or something or a pit trap or whatever, right? And it's you save or you fall and die and it's like one character, I don't have so much of a problem with it being a little less climactic as opposed to if it's like a big trap designed to kill everyone shot.
So is that what you mean by a total party kill? Is everybody all in one shot? Because that almost never happened.
Well, sometimes it happens in like the climax of things or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes. But usually it's sort of like, I lost my buddy back there when the Dark Elves came and I lost him to the poison dart trap and now there's two of us.
That's true.
And then you get to the end and you're like, and we're all dead.
Okay, fair enough.
It might be like one boss monster sometimes. You know, one boar. Sometimes that will do it.
Yeah. Well, and then I've seen some adventures are set up. I'm going to be real careful here because, like I said, lots of spoilers and potential, right? And that's
giant demon eyeballs.
What?
Gaping maw. Zeke.
Oh, yeah.
Killed us all with a giant demon eye.
That was terrible. It was brutal, savage. But like, so some of the ones I've seen that it's sort of like built into the game where there's a timeline, right? You have to have this done in so much time or the tomb collapsed or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so the gamey aspect for that kind of stuff, I 100% agree because it's like you're working against this sort of...
It doesn't remove the cooperative element, but it adds a competitive element. You know, like, oh, I'm going to do better than my last character. I'm going to make it further than your character.
I agree 100%. But what I like about those kind of timeline ones is that it's sort of, because no one's going to dispute the fact that the game master can load up whatever monsters they want in this game and just kill you if they want, right? That's not what makes it interesting or fun. But ones that have like a timeline on them where you have to have X done by this time and escape, whatever, those ones I find are more satisfying and interesting, because if you lose, it's like, oh, you know, like we have to be more efficient, faster, whatever it is. But although it's kind of hard to replay those because then you sort of already know the secret sauce, right?
Yeah.
So I can say I don't think I've actually ran Death Frost Doom for you, but I ran Death Frost Doom at our house for different people 2 or 3 times. Yeah, there's a Death Love Doom too.
Yeah, in that one. Carry of that.
Okay.
I don't recall. It was bad, and messy, and gross, and
right.
That one.
So I don't know where, and I know we're focusing and kind of shift gears in a little bit to different systems, but like most of the TPK stuff, it seems like comes out of that D20 D&D style world, right? The most common where you get in here and happen, and yet I can say Call of Cthulhu, that's the premise of the game. So whether it's Call of Cthulhu or Trail of Cthulhu, the premise is everyone goes to investigate this thing, and one of 3 things happens to your character. You die, you go crazy, or you disappear beyond space and time, right?
Call of Cthulhu sitting down to play that is sort of like, if I just left now, like stood up, ripped my character in half, and walked away, it would end the same, but yeah, I want to play it anyway.
So here's the thing, though. So I don't know, this is where it gets kind of weird, is it when we all sit down to play any kind of mythos game, whether it's King in Yellow or Trail of Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu, or any of the different sort of things in that vein, is it just because you're sitting down with the expectation that that's what's going to happen that makes it more satisfying? Or is it something else specifically like built into the world or the game setting? Does it make sense? Because I don't know that I've been through a Call of Cthulhu game where we didn't all die, go crazy, like all of those things, and I walked away feeling unsatisfied by the experience. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think the stakes we hire is like an ending that's about to happen. So it's not just like my character dies. It's like, if I fail, the world is over.
Right. Because mechanically, you can kind of have the same thing happen. Like, I fail the search roll, I trigger the trap, I die, right? Call of Cthulhu, I fail the perception roll, the Migo eats me, right?
Or I pass the perception roll and I look at the thing and I lose my mind.
Right. But
succeed or fail.
So functionally, like at a mechanics level, regardless of whether you're rolling D10s or, percentiles or D20s or whatever, like at the sort of the ground level of it, it's a random roll effect happens, and yet one of them is vastly more satisfying than the other. So is that, would you say, or do you agree with that, I suppose?
It's vastly more satisfying than the other.
Okay, I'll agree. Let me back that up. I've not had a unsatisfying Call of Cthulhu game where not everyone survived, where everyone didn't.
Yeah, it's like a spin orange, right? Like an orange is always sweet and juicy and delicious.
Okay.
Like, you don't want to eat asparagus every day.
Right. It's good, but
it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Once a week, maybe.
Right. But do you see, so is that because of the expectations that come along with playing Call of Cthulhu, and like you're expecting that that's sort of part of the conceit of the game, is that that's how it works?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think a lot.
Because I think
it helps too that in Call of Cthulhu playing someone who's not really a special exception.
Oh, right. Combat-wise. Yeah.
No, like as just a regular person.
Right, yeah.
You're not any cooler than any. You may be like a smart regular person, but right. You're still just, you're, a cop.
Right.
Or a private investigator or a university teacher. You're not Conan the Barbarian. You're not heroic by any stretch of the imagination.
So is it also, do you think that it has anything to do with the fact that the central premise of the Trail and Call of Cthulhu game is to investigate, and because it's more about discovery and investigation and like mystery, that it changes like the gear you're in? Do you know what I'm saying?
100%, because it's that curiosity.
Well, and then you've sort of, part of the premise of the game is that curiosity, everyone knows, perception rolls can be both good and bad to pass or fail in that game, right?
But you're just so invested in finding out what's going to happen at the end, good or bad. Like, I have to know.
Right.
I have to know what this is about.
Well, and then that's one of the nice things about, mechanically, about Trail of Cthulhu is you have your drive. So it says specifically, why does your character go towards the danger when everyone else is going away from it, right? So
you absolutely have. I said,
well, yeah.
You already know.
Right.
That looking at this and succeeding is going to be bad. Looking and failing also.
So I like to compare the two side by side because it's two totally different styles of game, and the potential for outcome in terms of like, oh, this is a good game or a failure is pretty far apart, I feel like. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you have a well-constructed scenario for Call of Cthulhu, I think it's almost, but everyone's sitting down to be like, oh, let's see how I'm going to die this time, right? So.
See, I don't sit down like that. I sit down with the same thing I sit down when I want to play Dread, right? Like,
right.
I know this game is designed to kill us all and make us crazy, but lives.
So, absolutely, because when I go
I'm
at that,
Sylvester Stallone in Rambo. It's me. I've got this.
Right. When I go at it, like I'm 100% all in trying to survive and do the right things and still pursue the story, right? I don't make bad decisions on purpose, but it is part of that thing. You just know the deck is stacked against you and you have to be crafty, right? So it's like a badge of honor if you're the one in the Trail of Cthulhu scenario that didn't lose their mind and go crazy or die. But then in the next scenario, when it comes up, you're already so far behind the 8 ball with sanity loss and everything else. It's like, well, we'll see how long this lasts,
now
right?
It's my turn.
Right.
Hand me that glass of absinthe, sir.
So I don't know. It's just weird because one is like built on that premise, and I just don't, I don't know. I guess I think you're right about how Call of Cthulhu, you are sort of mundane people, whereas you're supposed to be larger than life, Conan the Barbarian style or Gandalf or whatever, running around shooting fireballs and chopping off heads and the other. So,
like, if I, as a human, right, just nurse practitioner, was going through a cave and you killed me with a pit trap, no one would be at all surprised that happened. They're like, oh, she's obviously not prepared for this sort of thing.
She didn't bring her 10-foot pole. That's what happened.
She never had a chance. She's clearly not a Ninja Warrior competitor.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Should have been in the medical examiner's room, right?
Right. Yeah.
You're in the wrong genre, woman.
You should have been researching at Arkham Library.
Right. Fair enough. So we shift gears a little bit then. So when we played Morkborg, right, we both died. TPK,
yes.
One trap. Tremendous.
Can I say
what
about DCC and Morkborg? I feel like the reason that I'm so okay with total party kills in those systems is because my starter character has like 3 hit points or less.
Okay.
The minute you break 5, I feel like I'm in it to win it. But if it is less than 5, then I'm like, well, let's see what happens.
Right. So I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's where I was going to go is that why is it?
It's like designed to be disposable. You know what I mean?
I think that's part of the reason why. I think because also
the fact that you can randomly generate or automatically generate characters too.
But even not even just randomly generating, it's even if you don't have a generator, like Morkborg, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. Very quick, very easy. The character sheet's simple, straightforward, quick, boom, boom, boom. And I've got my character. So you could die. And depending on how big the combat was, you might even have another character before the combat's even over, right? Mm-hmm. So I get, because I can think in 3rd edition, we sat down to play a game before, and it was kind of the climax of a campaign. And JD, a friend of ours, had a character that died. I think we were like 15th level characters or whatever. Game gets cool, I'll make another character. He makes another one up. And this is kind of back in the day before he had easy generators, like online and stuff. So he makes another character. That character died. And then I want to say he went through 3 characters that night and was like, that's it. I'm done. That's my limit, And so it takes it takes a fair amount of effort to build a well-constructed 3rd edition character, right? So you think it's directly related to that because it takes so long to, like, with the conceit that you're playing Conan the Barbarian, right? And it takes you, whatever it is, 45 minutes to make a character, and then off with their heads and they're dead, whereas Morkborg, it's like, well, cool.
I don't know that makes the death more or less satisfying. It absolutely 100% makes me more annoyed by
right. Well, I think that's
just life in general. Like, really, I spent all that time.
But I think you have to take that into consideration as well, because on one hand, you have the game aspect of it, but sort of like at a meta level, if it's that frustrating, just sort of out of care, like, as a player, you got to kind of get those things to align as well. Because I think like that's where I come like with Call of Cthulhu or Morkborg. When I sit down, I'm already at it knowing, let's see how long I can make this last, right? As opposed to where if I'm playing D&D or something, it's more, I've got all the spendable hit points and I'm going to go gung-ho and charge in and see what happens. So it'd be interesting to look and see if there's like a hard number, like you said, 5 hit points is my mind. Does
I don't
like
know
my
exactly what number it is, but I feel like it's around 5.
So I just think it's interesting because like, where is that threshold for where it tips over? It's like, ooh, man, I might actually live.
Like 1 or 2, you're not surviving anything. Like 1 chop from the sword if the damage is good, 1 fall from 10 feet or higher.
Yes and no, though, because so for example, in that Morkborg game we played, we had omens you can spend, which I think is a cool resource because that game is very lethal, right? Not a lot of hit points, but you do have resources you can spend to, say, negate some damage or cancel a crit and that kind of stuff. So I think in that game, your character had 2 hit points and I had 3, and we died to a trap that didn't do damage. We like sunk in the tarry, blacky ickiness, and that's what killed us. So, and we had several combats that happened and just happened to get lucky. We had taken some damage, because some of the weapons don't do much and bad rolls and whatever, but yeah, I don't know. So outside of Call of Cthulhu, setting that one aside and setting our OSR D&D style games aside, right? Or wait, let's back up. We kind of talked about DCC a little bit and Mutant Crawl Classics. So I think it's important to mention.
I would like to start off by just saying I don't think I've ever actually made a character for either of those systems.
True story. Yeah, so there's a website, I think it's purplesorcerer.com, and it has generators, and you can just generate sheets and sheets of characters, right? Mm-hmm. So if you play what they call a 0-level funnel game for DCC or Crawl Classics, you can get like 4 character sheets on a page, and then you just give it hell and die, right?
You add in.
And, well, it's fun, though. And, like, there's a certain amount of conceit to it that, like, it's just adventurers in a barrel, essentially, right? Until you get, to a certain point. So, and I feel like that's similar to the Call of Cthulhu thing, because it's very satisfying in that sense. You can go through 4, 5, 10, 12 characters, and it doesn't bother me at all, because it's, to be honest, as we're playing, I've got my sheet. It's got 4 on there. I'm playing this one, but I'm also kind of looking at the next one. Kind of fun to bust out and play.
It's a similar thing, like I said before, where it takes that cooperative game and it makes it a little bit competitive in a different way. And it's that same sort of, it hits that other button.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and in the case of Mutant Crawl Classics, we have like, big laser guns and disintegration rays and stuff like that. Like, it's part of the premise of the world is that you might just get a hole disintegrated right through you, right? That's how it goes. So
it happened.
True story.
I've been there.
So, all right. So those games aside, we're rolling D20s for things, right? And Call of Cthulhu aside, the other games that exist that are out there. So like World of Darkness and that kind of stuff.
I think I would be a little salty about a total party. I don't know what kind of monster dropping that you killed everybody in the party in a vampire game, but like nobody escaped unless you're running Gehenna.
Yeah, even when I ran Gehenna, though, one character survived. Technically survived. They weren't a vampire anymore. I know it was Carrie's character, but she, I guess in the sort of the premise of Call of Cthulhu, where you either die, go crazy, or get sucked up by time and space. Well, she wasn't a vampire anymore, so functionally, the character was sort of rendered useless, I guess. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to think. There have been a couple Dark Ages games that I've had where there were everyone died, but it was a couple Hunter games we've had. But that's part of the premise of Hunter, is that when you go in there, especially when we first started playing and we're kind of new to how it worked, and you realize, oh, this isn't a neonate. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's probably the best example of a game will get really upset at character death. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because part of what you said about investment time, because those characters take a while to make, but to have a good vampire character is a lot of invested playtime in order to gain the social connections, contacts, status, all of that stuff is so in depth and, entangled, and it just takes, it's a lot of time and effort to establish things. So when somebody kills a character, like, you've lost a lot of effort.
I can't. So I'm thinking about one specific game that I had where it was vampire and everyone died, and it went really, really well. We had I can't think of the book of the supplement book, but it's a Dark Ages book, and you play sort of like Grail Knight vampires, right? You get embraced with Chalice, and gives you some special powers and that kind of stuff. Not in a Sabbat way, right? It's like this, I can't remember what they called them. Too long. Anyway, but they were sort of all on the road of heaven and righteous and goodly, in that sort of road of heaven kind of way. And I think that they were fighting they weren't sure whether it was a Bali or an actual like demon, right? And so they stood their ground in huge epic battle. Granted, it was a long time coming. They had to track it, investigation, all this kind of stuff. And they stood their ground and died, but ultimately like sealed it away. Do you know what I'm saying? And so...
Well, so that's kind of a special case, right? Because it's the culmination of an entire storyline.
That's where I was going.
It's a natural climax, but also it's fulfilling the archetype of those characters.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. So that's kind of where I was going, is that like you have to sort of, there are games and settings and like storylines where it's easier to lean into that and to create that moment, right? And the cool part was that was that game, right? And so then we played some other games and eventually circled back around to that setting, because it's one of the, like, that era is really cool, suited our gaming group well. And so I ran another game that was sort of similar to it, but kind of like running parallel paths or whatever, but then got to reference those characters, and their sacrifice in another game. So it's kind of like a really cool callback. And those moments are really cool
Like
too.
Rogue.
Well, yeah, no, it's exactly what it is. Because like, think about, I can, it's a great example of it. At the end of Rogue One, when you see it ends and then the ship is going by and you realize what just happened, that they just got those plans uploaded, and you're like, oh man, that's such a great callback, right? And that's exactly those moments that I feel like if you have one of those games where people are going to sacrifice themselves, like, and that kind of stuff, that if you can work in those callbacks, it's a really, really cool and great moment. The table to sort of like reminisce and that kind of thing, about a little bit. At the same time, that's a sort of you can only hit that button so many times before it gets worn out, right?
Well, the death for a cause, like, that's always the most satisfying death or whatever. That's not the one that we'll tend to get, because those deaths are usually at least partially by choice.
Right. Well, that kind of goes back to that player agency, yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, most of the ones we've talked about here have been like just through game sessions we ran, whatever, right? And stories that we were, sort of emerged organically at our table. Have you played any published adventures where you died and thought, man, I would really like to get another crack at, or on the other side of it, if there were ones you ran, thought, give us.
I mean, I thought my Goblin game was a really cool concept, and we didn't even get to explore it at all.
Right.
So that,
right.
But sure. Well, I don't know. I guess
that is the one in the back of the book.
I would play that one in a heartbeat.
I would as well.
I still don't know what's happening.
Right.
Like, I'm not sure what's going here, and the setting's cool, and I would definitely Cursed Chateau. I think I had a lead character.
We survived that though, but that's because I went into that one like trying to be uber crafty. And...
Yeah, but we didn't really. I don't know. Carrie kind of fudged for us.
Oh,
because there's how you're supposed to escape did not satisfy the criteria.
That's true, and I know that she wanted that game to shift in a different direction as well. So it's like other stuff or whatever. Well, there's a couple that I can think of. So Death Frost Doom is one of the most fun adventures in my mind to run. It's really, really cool, fun, and the dungeon premise of it. There's a lot of replayability and stuff, and I think that is pretty awesome and fun. Also. We haven't had it happen, but I could very easily see it happen. It's Hot Springs Island.
Yeah.
You could very easily have a TK. You could very easily have hundreds of TPKs on that island.
I made it from beach to beach, and I set sail.
And I would say that game, I could just run that over and over again. But at the same time, I don't know that I would call that a public adventure. That's like a setting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, because there's too many choices.
About some of the other LOTF. I don't think that I died in Salvador.
No, I
or
did.
England up for the shadow. I feel like we didn't make it out of the house, but like what the secret was at the end.
Right.
Blood and chocolate.
Right. So Red and Pleasant Land, I've killed.
I played Red and Land.
So I ran that for Isaiah, Eliza, and Ezekiel, and I killed them several times. Part of the conceit of the game, though, was they weren't sure if they were dreaming or not, so they would die. They sort of woke back up.
I got deaded in Carcosa Hardcore.
Yeah.
I would play that again, too.
But again, that one is similar to...
this is like Call of Cthulhu, right? Like,
well, yes, but I was going to point to Hot Springs Island because that one's not really an adventure. It's more of like a setting, you know what I'm saying? So not that it still can't be satisfying, but it's more, much bigger, right? So Monolith Beyond Space and Time, I ran for a lot. I've ran actually, strangely enough, that should probably be enough of itself. I ran a lot of LOTF, but as I read through it, I just filter it and change things. Yeah. But keep in mind that what would be in a PG-13 per se or whatever, or like horror tropes and that kind of stuff, because there's different stuff. So, I take it from 11 down to about a 7 or an 8. It still seems to work. But I've ran several for them. So Monolith Beyond Space and Time, they thought that was fun, but they all died in that one. Mothership, I've had a PK with them in Pound of Flesh, Red Planet. PK on that one. I've killed them. But they're wicked fun to do because they don't know yet. Like they're brand new.
No sense whatsoever.
Yeah. They're getting better. I will say they are definitely getting better and more crafty about it. But it's been fun because to watch them try and puzzle things out. I don't pull punches with them. It's the same, but at the same time, I'm not going super hard at them either.
Kids just come up with crazy. You're like, here's the problem, and they're like, all right, stick with me.
Yeah,
this is what I'm gonna do.
Right. Sounds good. Let's do it. Rock and roll. Yeah.
The second story, and they're like, build a tramp.
Veins of the Earth had several DKs with that, but again, that's more of a world as opposed to a. I don't know. There's several, but it's also part of what I tried to put together with Worms and Hastings Party was that the idea that you could have all of your characters die and then yet try to go back at it again and have much different choices city with the MPs that would fall. Mm-hmm. So do you have any other thoughts about killing everybody off or not surviving or?
I don't know. I guess I feel like I might have said it earlier, but when it comes to doing total party kill games for replayability, those more epic game with the martyr endings, those are satisfying, but I don't want to those adventures. Like it's already come to a satisfactory conclusion. Mm-hmm. Some of those less meaningful deaths, less story-driven deaths, like those are the ones that have that, create that sort of competitive.
Where's that puzzle element to it, right? Like,
Like let me try it again. That's exactly, it's like doing an IQ puzzle. All right, let's try it this way.
I'm down to 3 pegs. Yeah, I agree.
It's the reason I would play. Like, no, this time I'm going to get all the flags in place.
Well, and this is going to kind of call back to something that I've said many, many times, is that while I hate random tables at one level, the replayability element of this is something that I appreciate them for if they're structured, right? So like not Shadowrun. It's the Innsmouth adventure for LOTFP. And the way you... no, not that one. No, Scenic Dunsmith. Scenic Dunsmith is what I'm thinking.
I mean, I know that's not Innsmouth, but...
No, but yeah. So Scenic Dunsmith, or no, whatever it is. It's the... see the cover of the book.
Yeah,
but
it's not.
When you set that one up, it's got a die drop thing, which is just something I'm a huge fan of. And you drop several different dice on the table on a piece of paper, and then it sets different parameters for the game for where things are located and that kind of stuff. Power levels for some of the bad guys. So I guess what I like about the replayability element of it is that even if I sit down to play this game 2, 3, 4 times, if the way the randomness element to the way the game starts is different, then it really changes the overall possibilities of the game, right? So I guess
the things that LO is NPCs that you interact with.
Oh yeah,
and those interactions as well drastically change outcomes.
Well, and then Deathfrost Doom's a great example of that. So like, I think his name is Isaac. I can't remember there's a hermit you run into right on the way up the mountain, and I think it's a D20 roll. You roll to see what is he doing in that moment. And they are pretty far apart. One is from like, I'm sitting here sort of twiddling my thumb, zoned out, all the way to like, possibly just post-murder, right? Like covered in blood and gore with knives and axes and stuff, like...
Heidi-ho, neighbor.
Right. So when that's the start of what's happening, because it could change drastically what information you get from him, or he might even just kill you, right? So there's I like those elements where you have good tables that will sort of change things and shift things around a little bit to where the overall premise is the same, but sort of the starting circumstances are different, which change elements to the adventure. So, right on. All right, well, do you have anything else before we close this one out here? So, I guess, sum it up, kill your players. Or kill the characters, not the players, right? But I just don't pull punches and go hard at them. Because I think one of the things that I've noticed in watching a lot of reading a lot of gaming stories and that kind of stuff is that 5th edition, while it's not as aggressive or grim as a lot of OSR games, but it does seem like there's a lot of punches that are pulled with that style of gaming. And I mean, use whatever works for your table, but I think that you'd be surprised at what you might find when you go a little bit harder at things sometimes, and it'll make players a little more cautious, right? And it'll change the way they approach things and make them realize that sense of danger, because if there's never any consequences, then, is there really any satisfaction in beating the dragon and finding the treasure and all that kind of stuff, So, right on. As you know, we're a member of the Gonna Geek Network, so you can head over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com and check out all the geeky content they have over there. Loads of different kinds of podcasts covering all kinds of different geeky topics. If you like what we do here at Just More Fix, you can head over to patreon.com/JustMoreFix and support us there and get access to all of our raw audio feeds as well as pre-shows, and get access to our zines in PDF or print format depending on what level you support at, and join the awesome ranks of our Patreon supporters like Alan White, Simon McNair, Alistair H., Timothy Barra, Hector Treelane, Tiziano Furlano, Paul Hubbard, and the OG Todd Olson. I think that'll do it for us this week, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix, or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.